Hello, and welcome to the President's Podcast right here on the Record with the Ohio Senate, the views the news excludes. I'm Garth Kant, in for John Fortney, and joining us is Senator Rob McColley, Republican from Napoleon, Ohio, who had a major role in negotiations to outlaw foreign campaign contributions and put Joe Biden on the ballot. It was a big week, passed two important bills. Can you explain why they were necessary, and how important was it on insisting on the foreign money ban while putting Biden on the ballot?
Well, both were really threats to the upcoming election. Both were very important to the upcoming election. Number one, let's talk about the foreign contributions ban. That bill is a clear and present threat to the upcoming election in a variety of ways. Number one, it's foreign election interference in our elections, and it's foreign meddling in our elections at a scope and scale that we have never really seen in the state of Ohio. And it's something happening nationally where foreign nationals are pumping tens of millions of dollars, in some cases hundreds of millions of dollars, to be spent across states, across the country, to expose a loophole that exists in most state and federal law. And that's that while there may be a prohibition on spending by foreign nationals in candidate elections, there is no such prohibition in federal law for candidate or for spending in issues-related elections, or in most state issue elections. And so we know for a fact that Hans-Jörg Wyss, who's donated $220 million over the last 8 years to a fund called the 1630 Fund, has spent, and that 1630 Fund has spent over $14 million in the state of Ohio at this point that we know of. We know for a fact there's foreign involvement in Ohio at an astounding scale that would offend most Ohioans, and so we had to close this loophole as quickly as we could to end that foreign election interference. Aside from that, on the Biden ballot fix, look, somebody at the Democrat National Convention made a mistake. They didn't schedule their convention when they should have before the filing deadlines for all the states in the country, and somebody had a job and dropped the ball. However, I will say this: Ohioans deserve an opportunity to have a choice in the upcoming election. Ohioans need to understand that we're not going to stoop to the level of other states trying to keep a major party nominee off the ballot. And quite frankly, I don't know that at the end of the day it's going to make a difference. Ohioans will likely return Donald Trump to the White House, at least through their votes in Ohio. And he won it by 7 points in 2016, by about 8 points in 2020. I suspect, given the current environment, he will probably win by even more in 2024.
This all makes sense. It sounds like plain common sense. Yet Democrats have claimed that both federal and state law already ban foreign donations to ballot issue campaigns. Can you tell us why that's not the case?
That is either an intentional misstatement of the law, or it is an ignorance of the law, one or the other. Because at the federal level, the Federal Elections Commission has already said that federal law, when it defines elections, only applies to candidate elections. It does not apply to state and local issue and referenda elections. And so there is no such prohibition at federal law. The FEC said that as recently as December of 2014 and actually recommended action on behalf of Congress to close that loophole across the country once and for all. There was actually bipartisan legislation that just passed out of the House Administration Committee unanimously to close this loophole at the federal level. At the state level, while it's been reported by some that it's already illegal in the state of Ohio, and there is an Ohio Elections Commission opinion that interprets the law to say that it may already be illegal or that it would already be illegal, what people need to understand is that there's two divisions to that section. One division of that section clearly and unambiguously makes it clear to everybody that it is illegal for foreign nationals to contribute to candidate or spend money in candidate elections. There's no disagreement about that. It's a plain reading of the statute. The opinion the Ohio Elections Commission came out with was based on the next division of the section, in which it talked about more general language, that the Elections Commission was making an argument that even though it may be ambiguous and vague, they felt that that also applied to issues elections. This is faulty to rely on that for a couple of instances. Number one, that interpretation, that opinion was an advisory opinion It was not a case in controversy. It was not an adverse hearing before the Elections Commission. It was simply their opinion that they made. Number two, that opinion has never been challenged in court. A court of competent jurisdiction could overturn that opinion or could disagree with the opinion altogether and actually say that no, foreign election interference by spending in issues elections is not prohibited in the state of Ohio. And moreover, beyond that, there are no real strong penalties for it. And so despite the fact that the Ohio's Elections Commission, and this should be proof of the fact that people are not taking this seriously, despite the fact that the Ohio Elections Commission came out with that advisory opinion in 2021, the 1630 Fund and others are still funneling foreign billionaires' money into the state of Ohio on these elections for issues campaigns, and therefore they're not taking it seriously. There are no real penalties, and they're willing to take the risk to be able to get the money into Ohio. What we passed today not only makes it clear and unambiguous that foreign election interference through spending in issues campaigns is illegal in Ohio, they could potentially be facing misdemeanor or felony penalties, and they're also going to have triple damages that they're going to have to pay to the state of Ohio. So if they put $10 million in and they decide that, and it's found that they violated the statute, what you're going to see happen is the contributor is going to have to pay $30 million to the state of Ohio. The organization itself who accepted the money is going to have to pay $30 million to the state of Ohio. And the organization itself who accepted the money is also going to have to pay the $10 million back to the original contributor. So it's designed to have a serious deterring effect to make these foreign nationals think twice about getting involved in our issues elections.
Speaking of taking it seriously, your colleagues across the aisle have said that they agree they want to get rid of this dark foreign money and that it's a top priority for them too. Why then does it seem like that was that putting Biden on the ballot was an item they were almost willing to sacrifice in order to make sure that your original legislation didn't pass?
In my personal opinion, they looked at it one of two ways. Number one, I believe the DNC and the National Party looks at Ohio and says Trump is going to win Ohio. Like I just said before, I don't know that they are looking at Ohio in their broad strategy to win enough electoral votes to return Joe Biden to the White House. I think they look at Ohio and they say Trump's won it twice by significant margins. He's likely to win a third time. Beyond that, I think the folks in the Democrat Party in the House also realized, look, there's a strong likelihood that we're either going to have a virtual convention, which they announced earlier this week, or we're going to be able to go to court and get Joe Biden on the ballot anyway. So it was an easy decision for them to say, we would rather preserve and fight against this foreign money and this foreign election interference that we're so desperately relying upon in these issue campaigns to advance our far left agenda. They are saying we would rather preserve that than we would take a vote that we think we're going to be able to get the end result of anyway and getting our nominee on the ballot. So for them, evaluating the trade-offs, the Democrats would much rather keep the foreign money flowing in Ohio.
You may have just answered my next question, but let me know if there's more to it. Because on the national level, there's a bipartisan legislation afoot. GOP and Democratic members of Congress are co-sponsoring legislation to get rid of foreign money in ballot initiative campaigns. Why do you think there's such a disconnect with Ohio Democrats then?
Well, I would say this. The Democrats in D.C. are probably looking at this objectively because they acknowledge that, look, this is a national problem, and they're looking at it and saying, of course, foreign nationals shouldn't be able to spend money in issues elections. That makes total sense, especially since it wasn't that long ago that the Democrats were crying foul over Russian interference and the Russia hoax, all that's since been debunked. But nevertheless, foreign election interference, you could argue, was much more their issue not that long ago. And so on a bipartisan basis in D.C., they've agreed that, of course, we don't want foreign actors in our elections. However, in Ohio, it goes from an objective analysis at the national level to probably a more subjective analysis to say, look, this foreign money coming in is not insignificant. It is in the 8 figures. It's over $10 million that they feel they need to put their preferred constitutional amendments on the ballot and bankroll, and they feel that they don't want to give that up. And it's worth pointing out, that's not the only money that's coming in. That's roughly probably only about 25% of the money that's coming in on their side of these things. The vast majority of the money that's coming in otherwise that is still illegal is also dark money on behalf of what they're talking about and the ballot initiatives they're pushing.
Governor DeWine had some strong words for the House before this legislation was finally enacted, saying that the House's inaction was simply unacceptable, ridiculous, and absurd. Do you feel the governor's support helped get these bills across the finish line?
I do. I mean, frankly, we had been really trying to push as hard as we could over in the House with limited success to even get them to take the foreign national ban on spending seriously. I mean, Senate Bill 215, which was our original legislation, was passed all the way back in March. Never was even referred to a committee. There wasn't a serious desire, at least among the leadership over there, to take this issue seriously. After all of that happened and after the governor got involved and called a special session, it kind of put the issue squarely in their lap, with statewide attention being focused on it, not only from the mainstream media, but from liberals and conservatives alike, taking a look at the issue and saying, well, we really should have a conversation about this. Both of them deal with clear and present issues coming up in the November election. And so with all that being said, I do thank the House for finally taking the action and passing a bill that we can then send to the governor's desk. But I'd be remiss if I didn't thank the governor for using his pulpit, if you will, to get the House to take this more seriously than it had been.
Very good. One last question is kind of peculiar. It makes you wonder who's running the Democratic Party, because some of them have blamed television for the Biden scheduling snafu. Senator Kent Smith said, "Convention dates are often chosen by the television schedule," end quote. And he mentioned a conflict with the Olympics. Now, the Olympics run from July 26 to August 11. The Ohio filing deadline is August 7th, but the DNC convention is August 19th through 22. Do you really think the Democrats had no other way around their deadline to meet our deadline?
I think the biggest thing that they wanted is they wanted to figure out a way to go after, get as close to the election as possible and try to get a bump going into the election. I think if they really wanted to, they could have easily met the deadline of Ohio and other states who had the deadline prior to their convention date. And the Olympics happens every 4 years. This doesn't happen every 4 years. If the Olympics were truly that much of an insurmountable hurdle, this would be happening every single year. Or every single presidential election.
So you don't think it was an oversight as much as they just...
No, I truly believe they didn't care. For whatever reason, they wanted to be as close to the election as they possibly could be. They wanted to have as much of a captive audience as they possibly could after the Republican National Convention that is in July. This was not an issue for them. They came in and got their convention scheduled well in advance of any deadlines across the states. And so I think it was more so them wanting to have their cake and eat it too.
Very good. Senator Rob McColley, thank you for your insightful comments and for your time.
Thanks, Garth.